Hello everyone and welcome down to episode number 28 of the Down South Photo Show with me, Brendan Waits here in sunny Ocean Grove, and my good friend down in Tasmania, Cam Blake. Hello Cam.
Good evening, Brendan. You're looking nice and refreshed and bright. You must have had a holiday.
I did. Had a few days away. We're recording this on Wednesday. I got back on Monday. And I left the previous Wednesday. So whatever that works out, 5 nights away in beautiful, sunny and somewhat angry weathered Port Fairy.
Angry? Did you get some storms down there?
We got storms right across Victoria over that week. In fact, my hometown of Ocean Grove, where I'm recording this from, got absolutely slammed with some pretty full-on thunder and lightning shows. We got a bit at Port Fairy. I got to see a little bit of it. I didn't take many photos of it because I was too relaxed and chilled. But that photo that you can see behind me was the sunset when we were there on night 1. I'm just going to move myself out. And
cool.
For those of you who can't see, that is an aerial photo I took with my drone over beautiful Port Fairy. My goodness, what a great location. So so diverse. Like beautiful surf beach that you can see there, and then you can head up the river, which runs sort of parallel to the surf beach into the wharf area. Awesome reflections. It's a sensation.
Do you know what the river's called down there?
That is the Moyne River.
Moyne River, okay. Yeah.
Moyne, the Moyne River.
Yeah, cool.
And it flows out to they've made like a harbour, like, how can I put this, like a breakwater down each side of the river for a safe harbour for boats to get into the marina there. Cool. And if you're facing out to sea, you on the right hand side you've got Griffiths Island as well, which is a bit of a bird sanctuary for shearwaters, also known as mutton birds.
So did you send your drone over there and give them a buzz?
I sent my drone offshore from there. I didn't fly over the island because I don't think you're supposed to.
Probably not.
But we'll come back to that because I want to talk a bit about that later.
Cool.
I'm assuming your background is from your massive adventure that you've been on.
Yeah, my background, for those at home who can't see, this is a place called Granite Beach, which was about 6 days into our 8-day hike, and it's a waterfall. The river runs off into the ocean pretty much. It's got a waterfall. I actually had a shower behind the waterfall there on the rocks there. It was beautiful. We ended up having a rest day there. We got to there and it was just too nice to leave, so we just decided to take a day off and had a shower in the morning, had a bit of a swim, ate a bit of food, had a few sleeps. It was really good. But it's a beautiful beach. It's sort of a mixture between granite boulders and pebble, as you can see, and off to the other side here down the coast, it's all beautiful surf beach as well. So, it was a magical spot, and we were definitely in the need for a rest by day 6. It was hot and humid and no clouds. It was a hard trip, this one, so that's for sure.
Yeah, well, as I say, we're at Port Fairy and it was quite hot and humid there as well. So, I mean, we're not that far separated from each other. We do get similar weather conditions. So that looks amazing, the little shower that you can see there, so the little natural waterfall. So
yeah, it was very, very cool.
I'm just trying to get my head around perspective here. Those rocks, are they quite big? The ones beside, like under the waterfall, are they boulders or are they?
Oh, they're fairly big. Like, this is shot on a 21mm, so obviously it distorts a bit of the foreground. They range from probably basketball size to cricket ball size sort of thing. They were a bit of a mixture. The ones under the waterfall were probably twice as big as your feet. You could sort of stand next to them or stand on them. But we didn't spend too long under the waterfall. It was a bit brisk, but we were covered in mud, sand, sweat, filth. So by the time we got there, it was a godsend. I've never lived on the coast. Obviously, you live down the coast, and people in Port Fairy would live on the coast. But you just tend to get a lot of salt air on you and a lot of grit and grime on you as you walk near beaches. So that was a bit of a new experience for me. I'm used to getting leeches and mud and stuff from forests. So yeah, we got to the waterfall and it was too good to move on. So we stayed there the day. It was stunning.
Yeah, nice one. And when you were at that particular place, did you see many other people?
So for the whole trip, we saw a few people. So this trip, unlike the overland track where you can generally only go one direction, sort of north to south, this trip allows you to, you can land on the airstrip like we did and then walk out, or you can walk in from the road and get a plane out. And we sort of had probably about 4 groups sort of in our chunk on the way through, so everyone sort of walked a bit together. And then we saw about 3 or 4 groups coming the other way. So we crossed paths with a few people. The day we rocked up here, we actually weren't going to stay at this beach. We were going to stay at the one before, which was called Surprise Bay. And that was stunning as well. It had this beautiful little tidal river through it. We were going to stay there, but we decided that we'd push on just to get a few more Ks under our belt, just to make it a bit easier. And when we rocked up here at the campsite, there was people everywhere. So we thought, oh, this is busy. But then the next morning we woke up and they'd all left. So we had the whole place to ourselves for the whole day until around about sort of 6 o'clock that night when a couple of other groups came through. So yeah, there was people out there. It wasn't super busy, but there was enough to know there was people around. Yeah.
And I'm assuming at most places along a walk like that, it's designated. Like there's this particular area that they give up for the camping area. Do you find yourself fighting for positions, or is it first come first serve sort of thing?
It's definitely a first come first serve, and there's quite a lot of multiple campsites along the way. So the book, if anyone wants to do the South Coast track, it's this book here. So that'll tell you all the stops, but in between the main stops, there's also little smaller stops. You can stop if it's busy. You can sort of walk on another few hundred meters, and there's another one. So we didn't really get anywhere and go, oh shit, we've got nowhere to put our tent up. There's always plenty of room. The campsites were pretty big. All the major campsites had pit toilets. A couple of pit toilets weren't too pleasant. Having maggots on the toilet seat at one stage sort of turns you off going to the toilet pretty quick.
Hello to everyone having their breakfast listening to this.
Yeah, welcome to the breakfast show. So it was it was good. Like, it was well spaced out, and the campgrounds, apart from that one toilet, the campgrounds were good. The track was bloody hard. That's the hardest walk I've ever done. And I think I might have messaged you at some stage along the way via the satellite showing where we were. But we had hard days, hot days, lots of hills. I've dropped about 4 or 5 kilo in the week. I'm trying to put it back on if I can, because I've got to keep my figure. So it was pretty amazing. Amazing walk, really hot. Erin was a trooper. She just smashed it. She pretty much climbed all the hills without issue. It was pretty crazy. I've got, for people watching, so this will come out on Friday most likely.
Yes.
On the Saturday, I've actually put a 2-part video together of the trip, and the first part goes on YouTube on my Cam Blake Photography YouTube channel. Goes out there on Saturday night, but I'll probably put a link in the Down South one as well, just so people can see it. So, yeah, it was great fun, amazing trip, but bloody hard, real hard.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I'll be interested to check out that video myself, because you wum, were saying, excuse me, my voice has gone a bit funny. It's still got a hangover from COVID, probably, but whatever. We'll push on. So, in terms of the photography opportunity, or the photographic opportunities you got on this walk, how did you find that? Were you finding that the best photo opportunities were where you were camping, or were you finding as you were going along, and therefore the light wasn't always great, and that sort of? Did you find some frustrations along the way?
I tell you what, it was a really hard trip for me personally. I don't know about Erin. Like, Erin seemed to be shooting a lot, but I actually found it really hard to get shots, and I think that was more to do with the fact that I was just shagged every day. So we get up in the morning, and obviously the sunrise and that blue hour and the beautiful light in the morning that we've been talking about in previous episodes. Tried to make the most of that. The first morning we had a beautiful beach, got some really nice shots of seaweed and a little river running into the ocean and some rocks. And but during the day, like I said, we had bright sunny days. I don't think there was anything under 25 degrees. Barely saw a cloud the whole way, which makes obviously landscape photography really contrasty and hard in the middle of the day. But to be honest, it was more the fact that we'd be walking up a hill, and you might walk a kilometre, and then you just take a rest, sit down, and take the pack off, and you're just too knackered, too hot and too knackered to get the camera out and actually think of trying to put a composition together. Yeah. So for me, it was really quite tough. And I did go down there. I think I mentioned in the last episode that I didn't want to just fire off 1,000 shots. I really wanted to take my time, but I didn't even get a choice in that. I was just shagged. I was just so tired after.
Yeah, so it became more of a mission to complete the walk rather than take good photos.
Absolutely, yeah.
So like the good photo or the photographic opportunities were like a fringe benefit of doing a great walk.
They were, yeah, and that was the thing, and it was really like because you're mentally tired, because some of these bits of the track, like we walked up, it's called the Ironbound Ranges. They're 1,000 meters high. We left at 3:30 in the morning to start walking up to try and beat the heat.
Wow!
So we had head torches on just to try and get up there before the heat kicked in, and we got about 3/4 of the way up before the sun came out. So we were pretty happy with that, and that was fairly easy. It was hard, but fairly easy climb. But on the other side, on the way down, it was just chaos. It was roots, trees, climbing under things with packs on, swinging off trees. It was nuts. Like we didn't even get the camera out on the way down.
Yeah,
it took us 5 hours to descend off this mountain. So by the time we got to camp, we went for a swim in the beach, got back to camp, just knackered. Like it just didn't even think about taking photos. So there was, like, you'll see in the video, I put a few of the photos at the end on part 2, and there's been a few photos on Instagram. The photo behind me, like, this is probably one of my favourite photos from the trip because we'd had a rest day and we literally went down at sunset. We weren't knackered, our feet weren't killing us. We'd had a rest day. So we went down there and spent a good an hour or two before sunset exploring and got lots of different compositions and stuff like that. So it really did nail it home to me that, you got to be switched on. Your mind's going to be switched on for photography if you really want to get those nice shots. If you're really tired and struggling and you just want to get to bed and get off your feet, it's hard to sort of get motivated to get the camera out and try and create some sort of art. So it was a good lesson. I don't know how I change that going forward, whether or not you try something different. I don't think I'll do this track again. I think it might be a one-off, tick the bucket list and away we go. For example, on the last day we covered 23.5 Ks because we were just ready to get out.
Yeah,
we did a double day. We got a thunderstorm halfway through. So yeah, it was tricky. It was a really tricky trip.
Yeah. So you were motivated to get out of there.
Yeah, I think it sounds terrible, and this is not the way to promote walks and stuff like that. And I usually love doing hiking, but because it was just so hot and quite hard, I think by about day 4, Erin and I were like, "Nah, we're done. Like I think we want to get off this track." Because it was dangerously hot walking.
Yeah.
Water was a really hard thing as well. Like there's lots of brackened water and trying to get water. Like I was drinking 4 or 5 liters of water a day. I was just oozing sweat. It was just so hot. So yeah, by about day 4, after we did that big climb over the mountain range, Erin and I were like, okay, how do we get out? Let's look at the map. How many days can we get out? How quick can we get out of here? And, so it became a bit of a challenge. But then after we had this rest day, it made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Even though the day after this is the day we walked out from this spot, we were definitely recovered a bit more and started to reflect on what we'd already done and what we sort of conquered. And having a look back now and putting that video together and looking at the photos, I'm really proud of what we did. It was a hard walk with the weather, and it's not for the faint-hearted. It gets rated on the same level as the overland track down here. Whoever's rating that at Parks and Wildlife, they're on some sort of serious crack because it is not the same as the overland track. Yeah. There's minimal infrastructure, minimal toilets, minimal water. There's no platforms to put your tent up on. You are literally off the grid, completely off the grid. So yeah, pretty crazy.
So a tough one for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How well marked is the track? How well signposted?
It's pretty good. There was one girl on the track who took a bit of a detour. There's a couple of detours for views and little beaches you can go check out, but we found it pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
There's like bits of boardwalk, and there's obviously markers and a fairly well defined track going through parts of the forest, and there's like all these stair constructions up the mountains and things like that. So it was pretty easy to follow. It was just the conditions. The conditions just made it, just added that extra element. So it'd be like playing AFL football, midwinter where it's nice and cool when they get to the grand final day and it's 35 degrees and all of a sudden everyone's passing out. It was a bit like that.
Yeah. So more for maybe September, October, sort of March, April. you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. And keeping that in mind, though, this is the southwest coast of Tassie. It cops the brunt of everything. So
yeah,
I think we just got lucky or unlucky, whichever way you want to look at it. We just had a patch of weather that was unheard of. So many people I've spoken to, they said, "Oh, how much rain did you get?" I said, "We got about a half hour of rain on the last day in a storm, and that was it." They're like, "I've walked up the mountains in horizontal snow. I've walked up here. I've done this at all times of the year." So, if anyone's looking to do the South Coast track, try. It's hard to do, but try and pitch a season that's probably going to give you some more settled weather, as opposed to crazy weather. But
I guarantee you that the minute I decide to do it is when all those conditions will come back for sure.
Yeah. It is. Like I said, it was a great adventure. Erin and I had a great time, plenty of laughs. The one thing I love about walking as well, especially if you're taking photos, is you sort of get in sync a little bit with the person as well. Like you start seeing things similar, and like we walk past, like, oh, look at that tree, and we both stop and have a shot of that, or. So yeah, you do become a bit more heightened looking for photos.
Yeah.
But this trip was just hard because when we found the photo, we're like, oh, we're stuffed. We can't get the camera out. We're not, so
well, yeah. You don't know this yet, but while you've been talking, I've been putting up a few of the photos there, and
have you?
They absolutely look fantastic. I'm very, very impressed. I'm impressed that you were able to tackle such a big walk, but also that you were able to, by the sounds of it, able to get any photos out of the place at all, given the conditions. So
nice. Like I said, I got home and weighed myself, and it was 5 and a bit kilo I'd lost in 8 days. So it's a good head start. It's a good way to kickstart a diet and lose a few more kilos. But it was tough work. But amazing adventure, and I'm glad I've ticked it off. It's something I wanted to do for quite a while.
Yep. So not a lot of big walks left for you to do in Tasmania, I wouldn't have thought?
There's a couple. Okay. There's one more I've probably got to conquer, which is the Western Arthurs. Mm-hmm. So the Western Arthurs is a 17-kilometre long mountain range that takes you 6 to 8 days to finish.
And it's only that far?
And it's only that far. It is up, down, up, down, up, down,
Sounds
up,
pretty
down.
tough.
But, yeah, so a lot of people go into Lake Oberon, which is a famous picture made famous by Peter Dombrovskis, which is a big mountain, a lake, and the big pandanus in the foreground. It's quite popular. We might even put it up if we get a chance. A lot of people walk in there, which is like a 3 or 4 day return one. I have tried to get up the top of these mountains a couple of times with some other friends, and I've been rained out and fogged out. So that'll be probably the last one I need to do. Everything else I've pretty much ticked off of the known walks. There's a hell of a lot of other walks off the grid that I don't think I'm capable of doing anymore. But yeah, there's a few more to go.
Now, a question that I'm sure a lot of eager listeners are keen to know. Did you use your tripod?
I did. I did.
Because I would hate to think that you not only suffered all this psychological warfare while you're out of this walk and physical torture, that you carried that friggin' thing and never used it.
No, I carried it. I didn't use it to prop it up my tent. That's one thing. I think I used it on the photo behind us.
Yes.
I used it on this beach quite a lot. I used it at a few other camps as well. So yeah, I reckon out of the 8 days, I used it probably 5 or 6 days.
Okay.
Erin fell in love with the Olympus, or the OM system EM1 Mark III, and the image stabilizer. She didn't use a tripod the whole way.
Yep.
And she got shots just like me of long exposure, handheld. She was blown away. It really clicked on this beach when she started doing some really long exposures, the waves crashing over and stuff like that. I think she might have yelled out, "Holy shit, this is amazing," because she didn't have to get the tripod out. So yeah, we did use the tripod, and it was a bit of an ongoing joke along the way, because obviously Erin was here last week or the week before when we were recording.
Yes.
That we have to. I'm a big believer in that you have to use everything that you carry, even if it's once. You have to use it, and if you're not going to use it, you need
what's
to
the point of taking the bloody thing? That's right. Yeah.
That's right. You carry the whole thing for no reason. And there was the last night here when we had to go. We still had 3 dinner meals, like hydrated meals that we use. So we use dehydrated food, and you boil up water and then you cook a little pack. We still had 3 packets of this left, and we only had one night left. And I said,
"Well, go to waste.
That's it. We either got to eat it or we got to put it in the compost toilet and get rid of it." Mm-hmm. And Erin's like, "No, I can't waste stuff. I hate wasting stuff." She goes, "So you better eat it." She goes, "But I'm not hungry." I said, "So you're going to carry 110 grams out for no reason, and she did. She carried him out. I think she might have tried to eat one, but yeah, we used everything we had. All the gear worked out well. Yeah, it was good. It was a good trip. So
yeah,
you're back.
Sorry, I just had a little blackout moment.
No,
it sounds brilliant, and as I keep saying every time we talk about Tassie, I will be down there at some point. So that one sounds like a real challenge.
Yeah, this one is not, and I know I'm going to get shit hung on me from locals down here if they do listen. There's a lot of local Tasmanians who walk and shoot, and they are just incredible people. They're super fit. They go anywhere, anytime. To me, I'm a big believer in that. You just do what your abilities allow you to do. Don't try and overdo it. But this is a hard trip for someone who's been walking a long time and done some pretty big hikes. This is up there with the hardest I've done, if not the hardest. So if you are thinking of doing the South Coast Track, really do your research. Make sure you've done some overnight hiking and some multi-day hiking. Make sure you can be self-efficient. And as we learned along the way, you've got to be able to find water as well. If it's really dry, you need to have a little bit of bush smarts about where to look for water and how to treat it and things like that. So you need a little bit of expertise to do this one.
How much water were you carrying with you? Like, what capacity did you have for carrying water?
So we had a capacity each of 3 litres.
Yep.
So I had a 2-litre bladder and a 1-litre drink bottle, same as Aaron. But along the first couple of days, there was quite a few streams. But when we got towards the middle section, we had to carry water from the camp before. And then, we found some little streams, and we used there's like water treatment tablets you can put in. So we started putting them in. Some of the water was brackish, which you can drink still, but it's not enjoyable.
And not great for you in large quantities, I wouldn't have thought.
That's right. So, although, as I said to Aaron, I said, I reckon we could drink straight out of the ocean. I'd sweat it out about 5 minutes later. It wouldn't have mattered. That was a bit tricky with the water, but we were carrying at least 2 and a bit litres with us. 2 litres and a bladder in the back, and then a water bottle hanging off the front, which had a litre or so in it. So
Which is funny. I've got a feeling those tablets that you put in the water, they make it taste a little bit sort of chlorinated. Is that right? So have you ever tasted the water in Port Fairy?
No, but I'm assuming it tastes a bit like that.
It's amazing. Like, it's so bad. we got down there and we were... hello to anyone from Port Fairy. You've got a beautiful place, but by God, your water's terrible. We went into the accommodation and the kids had a drink of water. Like, oh, Dad, this tastes like I'm drinking the swimming pool.
It's like I'm in Adelaide.
Well, it was really ordinary. But anyway, that's just a little aside. Made me think of something when you were... So, next big adventure for you, next walk, already planning for that, or... Gonna just let this one stew for a while first.
Well, I'll tell you what. Like, we got home and Lisa picked us up. Dear wife Lisa picked us up from Cockle Creek, which is an hour and a half from 2 hours from home. Mm-hmm. She picked us up on that last Thursday at about 8:30 at night. And we got in the car, and then Aaron and I got back to here, and I swear to God, our feet were our feet are just swollen. Yeah. Feet are swollen, knees are swollen. I'm only getting back to normal probably in the last day or two from the. I've got mozzie bites. I've got march fly bites. I've got grass cuts from the grass weeds. Probably got some sandfly bite. I've got everything all over my legs, which I've been itching for the last few days. So
you're just a walking billboard for Tourism Tasmania, mate.
I know. Tell me about it. Yeah, come down to Tassie, get eaten alive. So not sure. Aaron, I think maybe might do the Frenchman's Cap walk, which is that's like a 3 or 4 day return walk. That's fairly straightforward. So that might be one of the next ones we look at doing. I'd love to do the 3 Capes walk, which goes down around Port Arthur and goes on the 2 peninsulas. It's called the 3 Capes walk, but only goes out to 2 of them. Talk about Tassie and tourism. Yeah. So I'd love to do it with Lisa, so we might try and organise that this year sometime as well. But for now, just ramping up for some workshops that are coming up. Tarkine workshop in about 4 weeks.
Yep.
And then, get into it for the rest of 2022.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I, as I was mentioning, had the little trip down to Port Fairy, and what I didn't do, oddly enough, was take a heap of photos.
Time out for a sec. Time out.
Yes.
Did you take the K1000?
Did I take this?
Yeah. Did you take it?
Yes, I did. Hang on. There we go.
Is there film in it?
Okay. So this is what I wanted to talk about. So cool. I took my K1000 that you gave me.
I'm proud of you.
And I put film in it, and it took me back immediately to the early 90s when I first got into photography, late 80s. Yep. Excuse me, late 80s, early 90s. When I got my first...
Did your hair grow back?
No. My stomach got smaller, everything. And all those... I don't want to call them frustrations, but they are. All those frustrations of shooting film just flooded back to me, like from 30 years ago. First of all, the night before, I loaded it with the film, and as I always did with film, and I'm sure you do as well, you know the first couple of shots are going to be useless because you've loaded the film, you've dragged the leader over, you've wind it a couple of times. So I went out the back and took a couple of photos of our Labrador. And of course, you know, through the lens, they looked amazing, and the light meter was working. Everything was great. So great, camera's good to go. So I get the thing down to Port Fairy, and I get it out to take my first couple of photos. And of course, I go to wind on, and the film is just dragging. I can feel it. It's not winding properly. It's grinding over the sprockets. You know, have you ever experienced that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, good on you. So all right. So I thought, right, I'll wind the film back. So I wound it enough so I could just feel that the leader was just there. Opened the back up. Sure enough, the leader was just there. Everything was fine. Dragged it back over, and then just went ahead and shot like 6 photos because I knew that they were all... So they're all stuffed or at best they're going to be double exposures. Like going to have my Labrador looking through a scene at Port Fairy or something. I don't know what's going to go there.
So that's about $12 gone,
Yeah, that's right. And then... And then throughout, over the 5 days, it was great. I had it over my shoulder and I took it out, went down to the surf club for breakfast one morning, which is just literally on the beach in that photo just here somewhere, the surf club. Where am I pointing? Over there.
Did you do the full hipster smashed avocado with your film camera hanging off your shoulder?
I went one better. I had the film camera sitting on the bench next to my latte. And I kid you not, 3 different people commented on my film camera, all of which were really complimentary, like, it is so good to see a real camera. 2 people used that phrase, a real camera. And I wasn't showing it off. I just literally had it on the counter while I was eating and having my coffee. And it was great. It was really interesting to see that reaction from people, not photographers, but one lady in particular, she was really taken by it. She said, "Oh wow, can I have a look at that?" And it's like,
it's like
sure,
car, isn't it?
yeah. So it was that was really kind of cool. But this thing's got a 50mm lens on it. It's the only lens I took. It is a 50mm f2. So not exactly what you would call a landscape lens by any stretch of the imagination, but I found myself really thinking about my photography again, because, as you just alluded to, every push of the button is a couple of bucks now. So
you can't just blow it off. No,
that's right. So I really enjoyed looking for compositions rather than just pushing the button and moving on. So what I'm actually going to do live here on the show is actually remove the roll of film because I haven't actually opened this up yet. So hopefully I wound it off already. And let's... Oh, yes, there we are. So
there you go. It's Kodak.
We have a roll of Kodak 400. What is this? Gold or something? Whatever they call it. Ultramax. Kodak Ultramax. Here we go. So that is going to get processed in the next week or so.
24 or 36?
That is a 24 exposure film.
Yeah.
And I am going to... I'm going to let you all know about the results. So that could be really interesting. So... I loved it. Had a great time with the film camera. It sort of re-sparked a bit of enthusiasm, as you can probably tell.
And you're so spot on though. Like it just slows you down. Like you've got to think. The digital age is all. How much can I fire off in 5 minutes and hope that I get some good shots? Mm-hmm. Film is how many can I not screw up in 5 minutes?
Yep.
Let's try harder.
Yeah.
To get it's like it focuses. It's like a sports person.
Yeah.
It's like a golfer. You can get up and just put the ball down and swing and hit the ball.
Yeah.
And slice it left or right.
Yeah.
Or you can really think about it, sit down, think about it, get your swing right, it's all patience and focus.
No, that's exactly right. And I've really found myself looking at settings. So, you know, when I was looking at, you know, shallow depth of field, making sure I was shooting at, in this case, with the f2. That's actually a really cool little lens, that 50mm f2. Nice and shallow depth of field. So I found myself looking at that sort of stuff. And then also, you know, pushing my apertures out to probably, you know, f8, f11, you know, 1/250th of a second, that sort of stuff to shoot my landscape stuff. But it was so good that Port Fairy's got some really cool, just about everywhere you look, you can see in the background there are the Norfolk Island pines. You can see they line a lot of the streets, and they really make up a lot of the backgrounds in Port Fairy, so a lot of the scenes that I was shooting. So I incorporated that a fair bit into my photography when I was down there. Cool. But really enjoyed it. I also took, as you can see, my drone and managed to get a lot of cool shots, mostly from literally the backyard of the accommodation we were staying in. And I think I sent you a message, and you know,
you sent me a few the Lighthouse ones. I think you sent me a few of them.
I just couldn't believe that I was able to shoot the Lighthouse ones that I shot. I actually did get a little bit closer to the Lighthouse to shoot those, but you're a kilometre away. You're 17 metres above crashing waves. You're pointing at the sunset, and it's like, well, where do you want to put the camera next? It still blows my mind, the technology in the drone. So talk about, you know, the juxtaposition of this, the K1000 versus the drone. It was pretty cool, and I think I was happy with the shots I got for being a family holiday, and I wasn't really focused, pardon the pun, on taking photos as much. But geez, Port Fairy, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, mate. It's such a great
sometimes on those family holidays or trips where you're not meaning to shoot, I think Mother Nature goes, this guy can't really do much while he's here.
Yes.
I'll chuck up some awesome sunrise and sunsets. That'll stuff him.
Yeah.
It does it all the time. It's just it's like we had one thing on the track where I woke up one morning stuffed again, and I looked out and the place was just glowing red. I'm like, you bastard.
Good on you.
I'm like, you bastard.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get up and have a look.
And we were lucky enough, the accommodation we had a decent sized window that faced due east. So I was able to sort of open one eye and peer around the curtains and sort of see what the sunrise was doing. And over the 5 mornings that we were there, not one decent sunrise. It was always clouded out. It was quite interesting, actually. It was like a lot of sea mist would come in overnight, and we'd get a lot of foggy, misty stuff, which in its own right probably would have made for some interesting photos. But I used the excuse of, I can't see a lot of colour there, I'm going back to sleep. So
I do that every now and on workshops. I roll out, I'm like, it's not going to happen.
No, I'm too snug in this sleeping bag.
I'll see you at breakfast, folks.
Fair enough too. But
cool.
So if anyone who hasn't been down to Port Fairy, I highly recommend you get down there, because you've got because it's on a slight little peninsula as well. You can take sunrises over the water, you can take sunsets over the water. You don't have to go too far. And the Lighthouse. So quick little story about the Lighthouse. So I wanted a shot of the Griffiths Island Lighthouse, whether it was from drone or just wherever. I just wanted to get there and get these shots. But it's a bit of a hike to get there. You can park at the car park and then walk in, or you can ride. And luckily, we took our bikes with us. So on the last night we were there, I said, bon voyage to the fam. I'm going out for some Brendan time. I'm going to go and shoot this lighthouse if it's the last thing I do. So I rode, I put my thongs on and got on the pushy, had my drone strapped over here, and headed out to Griffiths Island and rode all the way to the lighthouse. And it was about half an hour before sunset. Got to the lighthouse, and I'm sort of walking towards it, and I thought, that's a funny pile of rocks behind the lighthouse. It looks a bit like is that a kangaroo? And I got close, and it turned out to be a wallaby. Right behind the lighthouse. It was just the last place I would have expected to see a wallaby on the rocks.
You have a lot of luck with hopping animals in your photos, don't you?
It's I don't know. Maybe it's my spirit animal, Cameron.
Maybe
it is.
We had a little bit of an experience on the track with spotted quolls. spotted quolls were there. There was one. So Erin's background, she's a vet nurse by trade.
Brendan Googles spotted quoll and throws a photo up.
Bang, there you go.
Hang on, did you get a photo of a spotted quoll?
I did.
Well,
do you want me to put up? Well, Erin did. We both did.
Well, I want to see your photo. Up. Okay, done.
Yeah,
there
right.
It is. There's your spotted quoll.
There it is. So we got to this campsite, and Erin's background is she's a vet nurse by trade or by qualification, but she also manages a veterinary clinic down on the Mornington Peninsula. So we get to this campsite, we put our tent up, a few other people come in, and they set their tents up, and all of a sudden we see, oh, look, it's a sick quoll, he must be dying. So we all walked up there, and this story goes into another region which I might not go to. But we walked up to this area where this quoll was, and we walk around the corner, and it looks like a cat, really, about the size of a cat, brown with white spots on him. Got a head like a bit of a Tassie devil / thylacine type of thing. And it's just lying there with both legs out, sprawled out, just in the sun, eyes shut. And I'm like, everyone's like, oh, it must be really sick. I'm like, maybe it's just sunbaking. Yeah. And it opens its eyes and looks at us and just goes, no, goes back to sleep. And then some guy goes, is anyone a vet here? And I'm like, well, here we are. And it got me on. I got Erin onto the Seinfeld episode of Marine Biologist. I don't know if everyone's seen it.
Anyone here a marine biologist?
Yeah, if no one's seen the episode of Seinfeld, the Marine Biologist, go and watch it. It's on Netflix. One of the funniest episodes of comedy you'll ever see. Anyway, so Erin's like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. This I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And she looked and she goes, oh, I reckon it's sunbaking as well. Everyone's like, oh, that's dead for sure. It's dying. Next minute goes, oh, shit. Humans, gets up and just scampers into the bush, off it goes. So everyone's talking about, this little thing. Oh, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not okay. So we're all sort of having this little meeting away from our campsite. We walk back to our campsite. Who's in the campsite raiding this guy's bag of food? The spotted quoll. He set a decoy. He set his own decoy up there to get everyone there. Walked in, walked out of the thing, and then walked into this guy, started eating muesli bars. And then...
Absolute genius.
Genius. And then he was hanging around the camp the whole way. Erin got some really great shots of him doing like a big yawn and all his teeth. And then the next campsite, we had another one that was hanging around while we had breakfast. It was just sitting around in front of us. So, but yeah, really, really cool. It is great when you come across animals in the wild. But the shot that you got of the lighthouse of the wallaby, it's almost photobombing.
Well, this wallaby was, as I say, it was behind the lighthouse when I got there. And I'm thinking, well, I'll try and get a shot of it because... What two cameras have I got on me? I've got my drone and I've got my iPhone, and that is it. Because I went out on the bike and didn't.
Yeah.
I only had this drone photo of the lighthouse in mind, so I didn't think I'd get an opportunity. And so let that be a lesson, kids. Take all your gear with you, because I actually would have got a banging photo of this wallaby right behind the lighthouse.
But you've got your iPhone.
Well, hey, but I did manage to. He sort of scampered by me. And then I sort of flanked him because I wanted to get the lighthouse behind him.
Oh, yeah.
And
you lined him up.
I'm crawling through the bushes, and my very stealthy and quiet iPhone managed to get that photo that I just put up on the screen there. So
right. Unless the phone rang and scared the hell out of the wallaby.
Head on silent, man. Vibrate.
Yeah.
So that was pretty funny.
That was pretty cool. I saw that shot, and the red and white lighthouse just really contrasts really well.
So it was good. Yeah, it was good fun.
So when you do your drone shots,
yes.
For people at home that might have drones, I do a little bit of drone stuff, but I always seem to struggle with how I want the shots to look, what settings I'm going to use. Do you set yourself an aperture and just leave it? I know with my I got the Mavic 2 Pro.
Yep, same as
me. Where you can dial in the aperture and the ISO and things like that. Do you dial in an aperture and let it do its thing and leave it on auto ISO, or do you dial? Yeah, do you sort of dial full manual, or do you do?
No, I do it. Pardon the pun, on the fly, depending on what. Depending on what shots I'm after. So, to give you an example, the lighthouse, the sun was setting. So, basically, the last shot I took was as the sun hit the water. Hit the horizon. I don't know.
Did you duck down and duck back up just to make sure?
I so wanted to do it with the drone, but I sort of was too busy taking these photos. It did cross my mind.
I'm still calling bullshit on that.
Episode 27, folks. Go check it out. Now, so you've made me lose my train of thought. Oh, that's right. So generally speaking, when I fly the drone, I'm that invested in making the compositions, but also making sure I don't crash the thing or I don't lose sight of it or, don't put it in any peril. Because, when I shot the other night, which would have been Sunday night in Port Fairy, it was blowing a gale. So much so that I got the weather app up on my phone just to check what the gusts were doing and then Googled how much wind the Mavic 2 Pro can actually handle. It's like 90 k's, and it's like a fair bit. Like 45 I wish.
K an
no,
hour,
it's 45. They say 45 k an hour is about its max, and we had wind gusts of 40. It was saying on the app, so I was like, yeah. Anyway, I had to get the shot, so I risked my $3,000 piece of equipment and sent it out there. Yeah. But as the sun got lower and things got darker, then I started playing around a little bit with manual settings. So I shot, for example, an image at 1/25th of a second. Now, I don't use ND filters on my drone. It's something I wouldn't mind getting into, but they are so stable. They have this... it's called basically an airborne tripod mode. When you put it in tripod mode, it locks its position and it locks it really incredibly well. I realise that you're shooting quite a wide angle as well, so it's not really going to give much movement away. Yeah. But as I say, in winds of 30k plus up to 40k an hour, it still managed to do a 1/25th of a second shutter, and I was able to dial up like f11. I think I was playing around with, but always making. I don't use auto ISO. I fell for that trap very early with the DJI. It always gives you a stupid high ISO. So much so, grainy, so much so that it renders the photos pretty much unusable. So I'm always making sure I'm down at like 100 ISO. And then just like I would be walking around with a camera shooting, it's just I've got the thing in the air and I've got all the controls right in front of me. So I love that. Particularly, you go.
I was going to say, for example, the shot you got behind you.
Yes.
Because you can touch the screen where to focus, and the focus is also where it meters from, I believe.
You can do that. Correct? Yes, you can do that.
So do you focus on the foreground to make it brighten up a bit, or would you?
Yeah. So a shot like that, I actually focused on that beam of light that's on the water in the foreground. Because I didn't want that to be blown out. So then I actually ended up having to lighten the photos, particularly the foreground. I just used Snapseed actually on this one because I did it on the phone. I did my editing on the phone. Just lifted the shadows a bit and cleaned up the foreground a bit because, of course, the sun was so bright and blowing out. But I really liked the light rays that it gave me.
Yeah, it looks cool. Yeah, it almost looks like a lighthouse beam going across the water.
Yeah, that worked really well. And the sunset on Sunday night with the lighthouse itself, the lighthouse was throwing a shadow in front of me as well. And I just love being able to position the drone. So, for example, if I wanted to silhouette the lighthouse and put the sun right behind it, or I want to go up and get a bit more depth, and it was a load of fun.
Isn't it? It's one thing I love about the drones as well. Like, a lot of people go, drones, you can just go up so high. I reckon the majority of shots I've taken on my drone are just like twice as high as me, 5 foot or something.
Yeah.
But it's only
before I did. Nice.
Yeah, I'll hang shit on myself. Doesn't worry. It's only sort of maybe 10, 20 feet above where you are. Like sometimes just that little bit of extra height gives you a different perspective that you just don't get. Like anyone can shoot up high and down, but sometimes, like you said, just getting a little bit higher. But not crazy high, can really create some nice shots.
Yeah, absolutely. And like everyone, when I first got my first Phantom 4 drone a few years ago, the first thing I did was take it to the highest legal limit, which was 120 metres. It's what you do.
What's the highest you've ever taken?
120 metres.
Really?
120 metres. So, but I'm with you insofar as I like taking the thing out offshore, and that bit of risk is quite bit of an adrenaline buzz, but literally flying it, a couple of meters above some waves, and as I say, with a drone, being able to put a camera exactly where you want to put it, that's what I really enjoy about it. I had a lot of fun, particularly on this trip.
They are very, very flexible tools. That's for sure.
No, they're awesome. So I'll probably end up getting another one at some point, but the one I've got does the job.
And a letter from Casa.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had a letter from Casa once.
Why am I not surprised? Dear Cam, the Dear Cam segment is back for episode 28. We have Steph from Newcastle in New South Wales who dropped us a line. G'day, Steph. Hello.
G'day, Steph.
That's Newcastle, cool. New South Wales, Australia, as opposed to Newcastle, UK.
Even though we do have people in the UK. G'day, good morning, good afternoon.
Hello to everyone.
And good night.
Hello to anyone who is listening and watching internationally. We want to hear from you. We want to...
put something in the comments. Tell us where you're from.
Exactly. That'll make it exciting for us, self-indulgent. Dear Cam, I have been getting into... let me start that again. I have been getting into a lot of shooting lately, but I am battling with the process of sorting my photos after an outing. Is there an easy way to do this? Steph from Newcastle asks you, and having just been on an 8-day hike, you probably might have a bit of advice for Steph. Over to you, Cam.
The easiest advice is stop going out.
Done.
No, done. Next week? No. That is something that a lot of people do sort of struggle with. When I teach editing on workshops, I try to avoid the importation side of things and creating collections and catalogs and stuff like that, because I don't think I've ever met two people that do it the same. So what I try and do, especially like Steph's saying with an outing, I try and just create collections on I use Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom, and I try and create collections. So for example, South Coast Track, that'll be just a collection, and I'll import all the photos into that collection, and then I'll go through and quick collect and sort of sort through which ones I want to edit. But I try and keep every outing I do as a separate collection. So instead of just saying, like I know some people go January 2020, they'll put all the photos from January and February. I find that a bit tricky. I've also started using, the last couple of years, I start using keywords a lot more religiously than I used to. So when you're importing your shots into Light, for example, you can put in a keyword. So I can put in South Coast Track, beach, sunset, Tasmania, whatever camera I use, whatever it might be. So it helps sort things out later on. But to me, I find it's easier to organise if you import each outing as a separate collection and then work through that collection as you go through. So otherwise, I think you just end up with too many photos. They're all over the shop. You're trying to rely on memory of where you were, what date it was, what you're doing. So for me, the easiest way is when you're import directly and create a collection. So on my Lightroom, I've got Tasmania as a sub-collection, and then I've got all the different locations in Tassie that I've been to as a different collection. Weddings, I have a sub-heading for weddings and all the different people I do weddings for. And any commission or commercial work, I have commissioned work, I have a separate folder for them as well. So I try and organise it almost like you organise your Word documents, certain things and stuff like that. So I don't think there's an easy way to do it, but that to me is the more straightforward way that my brain gets around it. You might do it differently, Brendan. I'm not too sure.
No, generally speaking, with my stuff. So, for example, this trip, I'm one of these morons that does call it 2022 January.
There you go.
But then, obviously, within that, I'll have Port Fairy. So, and look, it's habit forming, and it's not an easy habit to keep in. And what I generally do, I'll bring up the photos on a big screen. So I can, so I can pixel peep and I can make sure things are sharp where I want them to be sharp and things like that. And generally, what I'll do, I'll know within a few seconds of looking at add an image if I want to edit it and use it and keep it and that sort of stuff. And I will create within that folder a folder called Keepers. So all of my folders all through my PC have a folder inside called Keepers, and then they become. Normally, so out of the trip to Port Fairy, I'll probably come back with, say, 15 to 20 images that I'd like to classify as keepers. I know when I did Mungo last year, it was about the same, 20, 25 images over a few days. So, and then I concentrate on editing those to the best of my ability, and they'll stay in that folder, and I know that that's where I'm going to find the best stuff. What I generally do also, though, is 2 to 3 months later, I will go back into the non-keepers folder and have another look.
Yes.
The amount of times I've done that and dug up a few nuggets that I've overlooked, mainly because it's so fresh in your mind's eye that it's like, oh no, I remember that shot. That's the one I remember. It looks so good on the back of the camera, or when I was composing the shot. You go ahead, you do all the editing, you clean it up. It looks fantastic. That's great. But then you overlook a couple of the shots that probably worked just as well, if not better. And I know from experience that, I've been back into folders 2, 3, 4 years later, and gone, that's right, they've got that photo sitting there and I never touched it.
And I think also, as you evolve as a photographer, your editing evolves and what you're looking for evolves as well. So I've done the same thing. I've gone back through folders from 4 or 5 years ago. I'm like, hey, that's not a bad canvas to play with. You know? One other thing that Steph is, this is almost sort of counteractive to what we're talking about. You don't necessarily have to sort photos at all, really, in Lightroom, because you can sort via the finding tools in Lightroom. You can sort down to the minute detail of what every photo is. That does rely a bit on having keywords, but for example, if you're like, well, I just want to see what the Olympus camera on the 12-40 lens, anything I shot at 2.8, you can dial that down and get every photo you've shot at that aperture. Each year I like to go through, as a bit of an end of year thing, I go through and sort my January to December shots, and I sort through the cameras and then what apertures I've shot the most at. And it's quite interesting because I traditionally shoot a lot at wide open and a lot at f/16 and a little bit in the middle, and my focal length is usually about 21 mil or 200 mil. There's not much in between. So you can actually learn a bit from your own sorting about what you're shooting and how you're shooting as well. So but yeah, there's different ways you can bring it in. I think, finding a way that works for you, like I do it one way, Brendan does it another way. Finding a way that works for you that, makes sense in your brain is the best way to do it. I think if you try and copy other options, and that's the other thing with Lightroom and things like that, you end up with other catalogs. I had one customer had a new Lightroom catalog for every trip, and he had dozens of hard drives. I'm like, what are you doing?
Too much
He's
time.
like, well, every time I go somewhere, I create a new Lightroom catalog and just plug that in when I need it. I'm like, I can see the logic behind that, but it's really quite counterproductive to what Lightroom is all about. So yeah, hopefully that helps Steph a bit.
Yeah, and I think, like I touched on, it's habit forming and getting in the habit of doing it. If you're part and parcel of being a photographer or being even a serious amateur landscape photographer, is getting in these habits of, when you're editing your work or when you're saving your work, well, saving it for a start. The amount of customers I've had come in with a memory card. Yeah, they're on here.
Do not delete off your memory card.
No.
So many people in workshops and even out in the field when you see people, they take a photo, go, delete. I'm like, don't delete it, because you're going to delete something you don't want to delete.
Exactly.
And you might delete something exactly what you said before, Brendan. You might delete an absolute cracker, a real keeper, that you haven't realised is a keeper until 4 years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't delete off your... Memory cards are so cheap and they got so much storage.
Yeah.
Just leave the photos on there and leave them on your hard drive. If you start running out of room on your hard drive, then maybe go on colour, but don't delete in the field, for the love of God.
Not even sure why digital cameras have a delete button on them.
No.
What's the point? No, I'm with you. We're in heated agreement for once. I like it. If you have a Dear Cam question, by all means, drop it to us on our socials, on our Facebook page. Send us an email, put up some smoke signals, ESP it to us, whatever you want to do. Thank you, Cam. You answered that very, very well. We also want to hear from you about your photographic horror stories. So if you have one, please send that through. We hopefully will at some point revive that little segment. January has come to an end, Cameron. I don't know whether you noticed, but it is now, as we speak, Richie Benno Day.
It is 2 for 22.
It is the 2nd of the 2nd, 2022. International viewers have got no idea what the hell we're talking about, but that's totally fine.
No, I reckon the UK
would
in London,
definitely
they'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Richie Benno is.
If there's any Americans, we apologise. You've got no idea what we're talking about.
They just tuned out. And it was great. Another effing sunrise was great. We got a lot of cool photos sent in. Really enjoyed looking at your photos. That was awesome. Which means we need a February challenge. And Cam, you have come up with a doozy.
I've tried to come up... Well, you said the last episode on this trip, I had 8 days to think of the entire year worth of challenges. I didn't come up with the whole year. I came up with this month. And the reason I came up with this month, I took my little Leica camera on this trip, which only has fixed focus lenses. And I found that during most of the day when I was walking, I was shooting at 35 mil. I thought, I don't really want to be changing lenses with blowing sand around and dirt and grime. 35 mil is wide, but also pretty standard. It works. So what I found I was doing is I was shooting at one length the whole day. So February's challenge, I thought would be a good one, is that you have to choose one lens, one focal length for the entire February. So if you know, people might only go out on the weekends to shoot. They might only go out once a month to shoot. They might shoot every day. I don't know. But my challenge to you, the February challenge, is that you have to use one focal length for the entire month of February. So it can be 21 mil, it can be 24, 28, 35, 50, 75, 100, 200, whatever you want to do, 300, I don't care. But you've got to use one focal length, and we want you to share your shots on the social media channels and tell us what focal length you've chosen, maybe tell us why you like that focal length. And then the challenge is over to you to create some magic for the month of February.
Yeah, so we want to see at least 2 photos that are different to each other, but that are shot at the same focal length. So
right.
More if possible, using the hashtag shoot one length. So that's hashtag shoot one length. Put on your social media, and we'll pick it up on that hashtag.
Yeah. Good luck. And I think there is a bit of method to my madness here, because sometimes shooting at one length, and like Brendan said earlier in the episode about his 50mm, the nifty 50 with his Pentax, I shot the 35mm on my camera for the trip. Shooting one focal length, and I mean, putting the pun there purposely, it does focus you on what you're looking at. You got to look at something in a different way. So it's a good challenge, and sometimes you might get stuck in a situation where you forget all your other lenses, and you've only got the one lens, and you've got to go do an important shoot or go on a family holiday with 100mm. You got to make it interesting. Well, this is a good challenge to find out if you can do it.
Yeah, and don't forget about the best zoom of all, and that is your legs. It's amazing how many people forget.
Do you remember, I think it might have been our good old mate Glyn, Camera House once. I remember he was selling a camera, and he was trying to explain the difference between 24mm and 200mm. Mm-hmm. And the customer was standing there, and our friend Glyn's a bit of a character. G'day, Glyn, if you're watching. And he said to the lady, he goes, what's the difference between 24mm? And so he said 24mm. He walked all the way back at the end of the shop. He goes, I'm 24mm. And then he came up all the way into her face and goes, I'm 200mm. And the lady was, okay. And she had no idea what he was talking about. But he did. He used his legs as a zoom. And I remember watching him going, you're off your dial, mate. What are you doing?
Yeah, no, it's uncanny.
It's
uncanny how many people forget that you can sometimes walk closer to your subject. Sometimes you can't. Granted, you might be on the edge of a river, or you just can't.
But if you're wearing a red jacket and got a head torch on, looking at the stars, feel free to walk a little bit closer to that area.
That's right, exactly. Get out there. Now, Cameron, you're back in the land of the living. Anything coming up exciting this week with Cam Blake Photography?
Not overly. There is an overland track trip going out that I'm not on, but there's a trip going out which I am organising. But apart from that, I've got to do a little bit of editing for that Cradle Mountain shoot I did before I went away. I may have to go back up there again. But up until kids are back at school tomorrow, that's about all I'm focusing on at the moment. And then I've got the Tarkine workshop, which is on the start of next month, which may have a couple of spots still left. I've unfortunately got a couple of people from WA who aren't allowed out to play.
Okay.
So if you are keen, they may be gone, they may be not by the time this comes out, but there might be a couple of spots. March 5 to 11, Tarkine. Have a look on the website; it's all there. But
link will be below for that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And how about you? You're back to work, I gather.
Yes, we're back in full swing. Same story here in Victoria. Kids went back to school this week, so it's actually kind of nice to get a bit of routine back. I had a staff member resign during the week, amicably, which was fine. No, he wanted to move on to greener pastures. So they all think the same thing, Cam. They know. They all come back eventually.
They'll be back.
No, he decided to move on. So left me with a bit of a shortage of staff. However, it does mean that I now get to head over to Torquay a couple of times a week and man that shop at least through February. Then we're going to be advertising for some staff. So
I was going to say, there's a job spot.
There will be. It will be coming up. Just sort of trying to work out exactly what that looks like at this stage. And it's probably a bit of a godsend, to be honest. Things start to get a little bit quiet around this time of the year. So we can do with a man down or a person down for the time being. But
maybe I could be the Torquay store manager.
Sure, no worries. We'll set up a Zoom little setup just like this, and you can just help people. A little bit of an honesty box maybe sitting there.
Like that Back to the Future episode where the guy goes in and orders the Pepsi on the screen.
Yes.
You just walk in, there's Cam.
Absolutely. That'll be exactly right. Speaking of honesty boxes, really quick story. We were coming back from Port Fairy. We're between Port Fairy and Warrnambool. There's a place there called Koroit, which is Tower Hill, that sort of area. Incredibly fertile soil. because Tower Hill is an extinct volcano, and they grow the most amazing produce. I loved it. We're driving alongside the road. Hey, let's get some produce. We stopped. You get out, and there is literally an honesty box there. You lift the lid up and put your cash in there, and this thing is loaded with cash. Went in and got our potatoes, our carrots, all kinds of stuff. We bought garlic and you name it. And way off in the paddocks, the old farmer giving us a wave. Thank you. Yep. Oh man, it was so good. So there's another little plug for Port Fairy.
That's the good old days, isn't it?
Oh, we loved it, mate. It was absolutely brilliant. So get down there and do yourselves a favour.
Now, I doubt she listens or watches our show, but I want to shout out to my very, very good friend Stacey Dwyer, who lives down at Port Fairy. Amazing photographer, does weddings and other bits and pieces. G'day, Stacey, if you're watching. I doubt you are, but hey. G'day.
Yep, and I'd like to give a shout out. This is it. We're wrapping it up now, folks. Jason, I'm sorry I didn't catch up with you in Port Fairy, but as I said, it was more of a family sort of get together. So, sorry.
We just lost a listener.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, Jason. Please don't hate me, but it was just one of those things. I sort of ran out of time while we were down there. That's it, folks. That's been episode 28. Unless Cam's got anything else to add.
No, I'm done. I'm spent.
Nice. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for sharing us around with all your friends and family and all that sort of stuff. We will see you for episode 29 of the Down South Photo Show next week. See you, folks.
Happy days.